I can't believe this movie's out now. It's been out for a week. I remember when, over a year ago, the first teaser trailer came out, and it was the first time a Nirvana song was put to footage of the Batman character. And that teaser trailer was so dark. And I remember there was a scene in that teaser trailer where Batman beats the living daylights out of this thug. Batman beats the life out of this thug. And then the thug is on the ground, and then Batman beats the life out of this thug again. And I remember thinking, was that necessary? Was it really necessary to beat the life out of him, and then while he's on the ground, beat the life out of him again? I remember thinking, is this movie just brutal for the sake of being brutal? Is this going to be dark just for the sake of being dark? And now that the movie's out, when you see that scene in the movie, it makes sense. It makes sense why Batman is that brutal. I can't explain more because it could spoil it for you, but in the context of the movie story, when Batman beats the life out of that thug, and then beats the life out of that thug again, you're on Batman's side. That thug was horrible. That thug was about to do something horrible to someone. I think what's probably most special about this movie is that more than any other Batman movie, it makes it very easy to believe why a guy would dress up as a bat and fight crime. Because from the very start, this movie does a great job of showing you how much crime there is in this city. Because this movie does a great job of showing you that this is a city full of people who are deranged. There is nothing strange about a guy dressing up as a bat and fighting crime. This movie does a great job of showing you that crime is like a disease the city suffers from. So seeing a guy dressed up as a bat fighting crime feels very reasonable. More reasonable than in any other Batman movie. Other people have talked about how this movie has done a great job of depicting Gotham City. How Gotham City feels like a character in and of itself. And it's true. This city, it's so beautiful. There are parts, it's part beautiful and part broken at the same time. And it really makes sense why this city would be a breeding ground for crime. There are parts of this city that look so untaken care of, and it really points to the corruption of the people who are meant to take care of it. This is not a spoiler. This was in the advertising, and it's helpful to know. The evil in this movie is corruption. Whether it's elected officials, politicians, public servants, it's about how people who are meant to look after other people are more interested in only looking after themselves. And you get the feeling that the evil in this movie is not too different from the evil in our world. And then the Batman villains. The Batman villains aren't comic book villains or action movie villains. The Batman villains are merely people who profit from corruption. People who are meant to be upstanding citizens who turn to corruption. And then the criminals profit from the corrupt desires of their heart. And then you have Paul Dano as the Riddler. And the Riddler, he has his sights set on the corrupt people of Gotham City, which makes Riddler an interesting villain, not a typical villain, because Riddler's enemies are the corrupt. And why are the corrupt people of Gotham City his enemies? I won't spoil that for you. But finding out why they're his enemies, it's very compelling. It's very engrossing. Now, what I will say about Paul Dano as the Riddler. Paul Dano's done a lot of great performances, but Paul Dano's performance in There Will Be Blood, I thought was one of the best performances I've seen in my life. And again, his performance in Love and Mercy, where he plays the young version of Brian Wilson, the frontman to the Beach Boys, I thought that was one of the best performances I've seen in my life. And spoiler alert, he does it again here. I think his performance as the Riddler, I feel like some people might compare the quality of his performance to the quality of Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. And you can't really compare them. They're very different. And I can't explain why they're different until I do a spoiler video. But I will say this. Back in 2006, when Christopher Nolan first announced that Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker, Chris Nolan said that watching Christian Bale's Batman go head-to-head with Heath Ledger's Joker, it was going to be incredible. I wish I could find the actual quote he said, but he essentially said that seeing the way Christian Bale's Batman face off Heath Ledger's Joker, it was going to be an incredibly satisfying experience for audiences. And I'm not going to compare Christian Bale's Batman to Robert Pattinson's Batman. I'm not going to compare Heath Ledger's Joker to Paul Dano's The Riddler. But I will say this, watching Robert Pattinson's Batman go head to head with Paul Dano's Riddler, it's incredible. That alone is worth the price of admission. Seeing Robert Pattinson's Batman go face to face with Paul Dano's Riddler, I found it electrifying. And there's a scene where Riddler does something. I'm not going to say what, I'm not going to say when, but he does something. And the lady in front of me, she said, "Oh, Jesus." Like, it was such a strong reaction. Like, I felt like her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the kind of reaction you get from an action movie or a comic book movie where, you're watching a movie. This movie, it gets you so engrossed. This movie really pulls you in. And then you got Colin Farrell as the Penguin. He's not the main character. He's kind of peppered throughout the movie, is what Colin Farrell said. But when he's in it, I loved it. This is a dark film. It's about detectives trying to catch a serial killer. And the Penguin brings some much needed levity. He brings a really awesome sense of humor. But he's so much more than just the funny bone of this movie. You see, he's clearly a criminal, but there's something honorable about him. There is so much potential with this character. Penguin has evolved a lot from his roots. He's not the cigarette-smoking, English-speaking gentleman, but it's the same spirit of the character. He's got the charm, the wit. I think it's a great Penguin for our world and our time. Now, Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman. Incredible. Perfect. Couldn't be better. Christopher Nolan, who made the Dark Knight trilogy, he said that Batman and Batman characters are so iconic. When people see the Batman icon, most people in the world recognize that icon and have very strong pictures in their head of who Batman is and what a Batman story should be. Most people in the world have that in their head. So Chris Nolan said, when you're telling your Batman story, you can't think about the icon because the icon will overwhelm you. Turn away from the icon and think about who that character could be in this world. And then you tell the story of that person in this world. And Matt Reeves has done that for everyone in this movie, but you feel it most strongly with Catwoman. The way this character is told in this movie, there is no fantasy to it. It's very real and understandable why a human being in our world would end up becoming someone known as Catwoman. And I feel like Matt Reeves, he's just done a great job of doing what Chris Nolan said every Batman storyteller has to do. And Matt Reeves has just taken it to a whole nother level. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this because Michael Caine really touched my heart, but this Andy Serkis' Alfred is my favorite Alfred. And I won't say more until a spoiler video. Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon. Again, in previous Batman movies, even the best ones, the parts that really grabbed you, we're seeing Batman and Gordon even doing incredibly heroic things, defying incredible odds, literally overcoming darkness. Very inspiring stuff. The stuff that really grabs you in those movies are very operatic, but in this movie, the stuff that grabs you, for me, was just watching Batman and Gordon talk, watching them work together to try to solve the pieces of the puzzle that Riddler has left behind. Watching Batman and Gordon work together as partners in crime, it's kind of heartwarming. Like, seeing that is inspiring. Just seeing them work together and talk through the details of the case they're on. Just seeing two people work together, that's so inspiring. There's a scene in the movie where Gordon is driving through Gotham City, and Gotham City looks so run down, so worn out. Then Gordon goes up an elevator, cameras on Gordon's face, and Gordon looks so run down, so worn out. So he's taking the elevator to the top of this discreet building, and at the top of this discreet building, he meets Batman. As Gordon goes to the top of this building, he's got so much on his mind, he's so overwhelmed. And then Batman comes, and he's got Batman to talk to, he's got Batman to work with. And just seeing that Gordon's not alone because of Batman. He's not alone in this dark mystery because he's working with Batman. And Michael Giacchino plays this music. I've seen the movie a few times and it gets me every time. And what I'll say is that this is a Batman movie that's going to inspire young people. It's not for very young people. It's not for kids. But this is a Batman movie that's going to inspire young people to problem solve. I remember watching Batman movies, and after the movie finished, I was inspired to jump off rooftops and fly or swing with my grapple or swing through a city. Like, that's where my imagination went. But with this movie, you leave it inspired to work through problems and work together with a like-minded person who has the same values you have. So yeah, great Gordon. I can't say more because I'd spoil it, but even like characters who have very small roles, this movie got one of the best actors working today to play a very small role. And you'll see why that role needed one of the best actors working today. That's how great this movie is. But yeah, I think the biggest deal is Robert Pattinson as Batman. Okay, I'm not comparing, but I'm going to explain the difference. Christian Bale is my favorite Batman. He's one of my favorite actors, top 5 favorite actors of all time. So I'm always going to have an affinity to Christian Bale. But in the Dark Knight movies, Christian Bale plays the Dark Knight, and he's playing essentially a knight. Like, his Batman is more like D'Artagnan or one of the knights of King Arthur's Round Table. He's very heroic and charismatic. Now, he deals with darkness, but he deals with it as a very heroic character, like one of King Arthur's knights. Now, Robert Pattinson is Batman. He's more like Dracula if Dracula was a good person. Now, one thing that really surprised me about this movie, I was concerned that they were going to make Batman really dark and troubled and emo, but no. He comes across as wonderful. He comes across as a hero, as a really good person. But Robert Pattinson plays Batman. There's a line in Bela Lugosi's Dracula. They're in the castle, the wolves are howling, and all the nocturnal animals are making a lot of noise. And Dracula says, "Children of the night, what music they make." And that's what he feels like. As Batman, he really feels more like a creature of the night. He really feels like a child of the night. He feels like Dracula if Dracula was a good person. He's so haunted. More than any other Batman movie, you feel the weight of someone who lost their parents at a very young age in a very brutal way. And I think this movie does a great job of showing how Robert Pattinson's Batman has a broken heart, a broken soul. He has a broken soul, but a determined spirit. And this movie does a great job of balancing that. Robert Pattinson does a great job of balancing that. Yeah, I can't say any more without spoiling anything, so I think so I'm going to have to leave it there. Yeah, more than any other Batman movie, this movie is going to inspire people from young and old to really use their mind. I think superhero movies based on a comic book character are seen as movies that really affect audiences in a way where they let their imagination run wild and get carried away with their imagination. Whereas this movie, I think it's going to affect audiences in a way where it inspires audiences to really problem solve and be thoughtful and determined. This is a really special movie. This movie has a real heart and soul. Matt Reeves has really put his heart and soul in this film. So for anyone saying, all these movies, they're so alike, they're all the same, no one's making anything original. Well, this movie is not like any other. It's so unique, so I really hope people support it. And then more movie studios will make more movies as unique as this one. So I hope you give it a shot. So if you haven't seen it yet, I hope you see it. And I look forward to doing a spoiler video next week. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.